Breathing Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or any questions you may have. And please stay with us. Our the Buffalo News is coming up in just a moment.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, January 22nd. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Ruth Nowotniak. And we'll go to our weather. I think everybody knows how the weather is. It's snowy.
Cold.
And cold.
Continued cold.
The forecast. Lake effect snow today, accumulating a coating to an inch. Squalls can bring whiteout conditions at times. High 29. Flurries tonight. Low 9. A couple of snow showers tomorrow, high of 14. Saturday, bitterly cold, high of 8. And it looks like Sunday is still frigid with a little snow, high of 12. Nationally, the extreme temperatures, Naples was high at 79 degrees, and Stanley, Idaho was at negative 14. There are still our ski resorts are open, some with new snow, some without, but lots of base, so the trails are open. The sunrise today was at 7:39, and it will set this evening at 5:15, so the days are getting longer little by little.
Mm-hmm.
And in the snow derby, Buffalo is ahead by 0.3 inches over Anchorage, Alaska. We have 45.5. Anchorage has 45.2. And in the season to date, Syracuse is the high with 92, Jamestown with 68, Rochester with 59, and then we have 45 inches. So we'll go to our front page article. Our first article is the analysis article by Nathan Gonzalez from the CQ Roll Call. Trump is continuing his kingmaker role in GOP's primaries. While candidates typically scour the landscape for support of any kind ahead of a competitive primary, there's only one person whose endorsement matters on the Republican side, President Donald J. Trump. That's why Senators Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and John Cornyn of Texas are struggling to survive re-election this year with the leader of their party either endorsing an opponent or declining to weigh in. For years, candidates have made pilgrimages to the White House and Mar-a-Lago for a chance to make their case to the president, or even aired TV ads in the West Palm Beach, Florida area media market with hopes of catching Trump's attention. So is it even worth soliciting support from local elected officials and outside groups? Veteran Republican campaign operatives declined to speak on the record, since they have candidates still hoping to secure that complete and total nod from Trump. But they provided some insight into the process, with the first slate of primaries just 6 weeks away. None of the old tricks work anymore, when the only thing that matters is where Trump is, said one GOP strategist involved in House and Senate races. Trump remains the clear leader of the Republican Party. While his job approval hovers around 40% in most nationwide polls, he's still extremely popular among Republicans. More specifically, the president had an 84% approval rating among Republicans, according to a late November Gallup poll. The Gallup survey also showed the GOP-controlled Congress with a 23% job approval rating from self-described Republicans, and individual favorability ratings reflected the same dynamic. There's no one else to rival Trump's popularity within the GOP. Still, while there is unanimity over who's the most important endorser in a Republican primary, getting Trump's support isn't easy. You have to show the president that you can do it on your own, but still need the endorsement, said one consultant. Of course, the president wants to support someone who is aligned with him and his policies, but he also doesn't like to be associated with losers. For example, he did not endorse then Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears in the Virginia gubernatorial race last year when it wasn't clear she was going to win. Trump is less likely to endorse candidates who are trailing, even though his support could help pull them ahead. GOP strategists appreciate the more methodical nature of the current White House political operation, especially compared with his first term. But there is some frustration that the process has delayed other endorsements and frozen several fields. Without a Trump endorsement, crowded and competitive primaries can persist, and other donors might remain on the sidelines because they don't want their investment going to waste if the president subsequently swoops in to pick another candidate. Endorsements from Speaker Mike Johnson and House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, both from Louisiana, or from Senate Majority Leader John Thune from South Dakota, and National Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee Chairman Tim Scott from South Carolina, don't carry the same weight as Trump's, but can be a sign that the president might not be too far behind because of the communication between Trump's team, the party committees, and GOP outside groups. For example, Georgia Representative Brian Jack, who leads candidate recruitment at the National Republican Congressional Committee, used to handle endorsements for the president. And Senate Leadership Fund Executive Director Alex Lechem is a veteran Trump campaign advisor. There are exceptions, of course. Cassidy had the support of Thune and Scott, but Trump went on to back Representative Julia Letlau, who announced her challenge to the senator Tuesday, and the GOP establishment has been fully behind Corwin. For candidates complaining about the slower White House endorsement process, a campaign consultant offered a piece of advice: work harder. Smart Republican candidates aren't putting all their eggs in the Trump basket. They're also trying to gather support from around their state or district, even if it's not as fruitful as a presidential endorsement. I hate endorsements, the campaign consultant said, of garnering support of the non-Trump variety in the current political environment, but it's campaign 101. Even if primary voters are persuaded only by the president, endorsements from state legislators and local officials can demonstrate grassroots support. In the absence of Trump's endorsement, it also helps to have conservative validators. If you're running anywhere, you need household names that are known by the conservative base, said the GOP strategist, name-dropping Ohio Representative Jim Jordan as an example. But no elected official wants to get out ahead of Trump. Increasingly, Republican members of Congress are risk-averse and unlikely to get involved in a race without seeing who Trump endorses first, or, at a minimum, before communicating with the White House. Smart politicos will reach out to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles or White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair to decrease the chances of ending up on the wrong side of a primary. There was a time when other politicians mattered more in Republican primaries. Senators such as Jesse Helms of North Carolina or Phil Gramm of Texas helped to deliver ideological seals of approval. Now senators are chintzy with their endorsement, said the GOP strategist. Political capital is a muscle. You have to flex it to make it bigger. And there's some uncomfortable soreness to get bigger. But most people treat it like a bank account. Once you lose it, you can't get it back. There's also a potential shift in endorsement targets beyond Trump. I used to get county chairmen and state reps across the district, but now it's sheriffs, the GOP strategist said. Top local law enforcement officials can have political operations that transcend party lines and can be validators on an important issue to voters. Email or text solicitations signed by a sports figure or celebrity are also more likely to be opened at a time when endorsements can matter more than fundraising for voter persuasion. Influencers are having a moment, the campaign consultant said, of activists with a significant online presence. They can leverage their platforms and help fill space in the media world that seems to thrive on constant content. But it can also be a pay-to-play situation for campaigns. They're nice to have if you can afford it, added another party operative. GOP outside groups are reluctant to engage ahead of the president for fear of picking the wrong side, but there's been at least one exception. The conservative Club for Growth Action went in early in the open Senate race in Kentucky with TV ads against Representative Andy Barr. The president has remained on the sidelines, even though Donald Trump Jr. and Senator Jim Banks of Indiana have lined up behind businessman Nate Morris. And Elon Musk just pledged $10 million to a pro-Morris super PAC. Former Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, the initial frontrunner due to name identification, has struggled to keep up in fundraising. But unless Morris can demonstrate support in the polls, a full endorsement from the president seems unlikely. In general, Republican candidates are more interested in groups that spend money or provide tangible resources rather than just a stamp of approval. AIPAC and Club for Growth Action have that reputation, as do Americans for Prosperity and a few unions on occasion. With some of these, you just want to check the box, said a fifth party operative. Turning Point USA is a polarizing group in Republican campaign circles. On one hand, the assassination of its co-founder, Charlie Kirk, was a moment for the conservative movement, but the group has raised a ton of money since his killing. But some campaign professionals are skeptical of the group's electoral impact. It has the ability to organize on college campuses and engage low-propensity voters who would be critical to the Republican Party's future success. But TPUSA hasn't yet demonstrated it can move the needle in elections. One of the GOP consultants pointed to the group's home state of Arizona, where, except for Trump's 2024 victory, Republicans have fallen short in most other major races over the past decade.
Thank you. Could a cash prize boost attendance in Buffalo schools? This is from Ben Sugimoto. For Buffalo Public School students, winning the lottery might just mean showing up to school regularly. Superintendent Pascal Mubanga on Wednesday unveiled the student attendance lottery, which will reward students who miss no more than one day of school in a month, with the chance to win between $200 and $500. The initiative begins in February to reward January attendance. No entry or sign-up is required. A purpose behind Mubanga's giveaway is to reinforce the critical connection between being in school each day and academic success, according to the district's news release. While much of the superintendent's first 100 days has been devoted to learning about the district, he's been vocal about the need to improve student attendance. Mubanga said he is engaged with First Student Incorporated and the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority about how transportation issues impact attendance. He's also spoken at 8 of the school's large, predominantly black churches about parental and community responsibility. With help from the Hispanic Heritage Council of Western New York, the district has also released videos with translation in Spanish in a similar effort to connect with the district's Hispanic population. I'm not blaming the parents, but there is a responsibility for parents that their babies are coming to school, a responsibility for caregivers and grandparents as well, Mubanga said Wednesday. If parents aren't doing that, then it becomes a community problem. Adding a lottery as an attendance incentive should help some students, complementing the transportation and outreach efforts, Mubanga said. It's not a silver bullet, he said, but it's another layer how to get students really motivated to come to school. The lottery setup is straightforward. Each of the 60 district schools will keep track of how many of its students miss 1 or 0 days of school each month, then determine one of those students to represent the school. In a lottery of the 60 students, Mubanga's office then randomly selects 3 names from that group, and the first name drawn will receive $500, the second $300, and the third $200. The process will be repeated each month. Say Yes Buffalo, a longtime district partner that offers scholarships and other programs, will fund the lottery winnings, Mubanga said. Any effort that helps drive students to improve attendance is an investment worth making, and we applaud Dr. Mubanga's innovation, said David Rust, Say Yes Buffalo CEO. Mubanga said that he ran a program with a similar objective during the 5 of his 7 years leading Durham Public Schools. The North Carolina School District allocated about $40,000 to each building principal to find ways to motivate students, he said. The outcome was really amazing. It was not just for attendance, but also how students could be motivated to be in school and participate in school. Buffalo's district-wide attendance rate has improved slightly over last school year, with average daily attendance at about 83% compared with last year's 81.5%. It is common that attendance worsens in the second half of the school year, especially among high schoolers. It is not the first time in the last 4 years that the Buffalo Schools has attempted an incentive program. In the 2022-23 year, amid the nationwide bus driver shortage, the district experimented with compensating parents who were willing to drive their children to and from school. That pilot program was short-lived. Previous district superintendent Tonya M. Williams-Knight tried a few strategies to boost attendance rate, emphasizing that the role of attendance teachers was as key to student support program change, and in 2024, scheduling many of them to work Saturdays in order to be more effective reaching the families of students who are missing in school. It's hard to gauge the effectiveness of the Saturday scheduling with publicly available data, but the district's average daily attendance did increase from 81.1% to 81.5% in the year after its implementation. Mubenga said the lottery will run through the end of the academic year, at which point the district will compare attendance data through December with the 6 months of the lottery. We'll see whether or not we're making progress, and if we're making progress, definitely we'll continue, he said. And I'll go back to David Rust or some other organization to be able to help us continue with this initiative.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is about 16 minutes past the hour, and we will go now to our editorial article, Smart Focus. Hochul's plan to combine Niagara Falls, Whirlpool, and Devil's Hole state parks makes sense. This is one of the best ideas for the U.S. side of Niagara Falls that we've heard in a while. It's simple. Make the most of our spectacular state parks. It's true that on the other side of the border, Canada has more in the way of brick-and-mortar attractions, but the American side of the falls has nature in its corner, as Governor Kathy Hochul, who grew up here, knows quite well. Her plan, as described in her State of the State vision last week, is to gather in the spectacular Whirlpool and Devil's Hole state parks under the umbrella of Niagara Falls State Park. Most tourists leave Niagara Falls without the vaguest awareness that these sites even exist. But they are not only close enough to the falls for an easy inclusion, they are of equal value. Whirlpool State Park offers unmatchable views of the gorge, both from above and from paths that follow the Niagara River at close range. Devil's Hole is connected to Whirlpool via trails of varying difficulty. It, too, boasts multiple perspectives of the river and its turbulent rapids, as well as intriguing natural caves and abundant wildlife. Both are great for birdwatchers. These parks, which allow visitors to get up close and personal with the mighty Niagara, offer perspectives on its wild beauty that a quick trip to Prospect or Terrapin Points will not provide. They help tell the rest of this geological story, one that's more than 12,000 years in the making. The rock formations in particular help human eyes understand the process through which this imposing topography took shape. Little of this is evident from getting a couple selfies with the Horseshoe Falls in the background. Particularly during and since the pandemic, people everywhere are realizing the benefits of getting outdoors for walks and hikes. Trips to the... excuse me.
Sure.
Trips to the three interconnected parks, Niagara, Whirlpool, Devil's Hole, offer a wide range of options. It's relatively easy to walk along the rim trail from the falls to Whirlpool or even Devil's Hole. Those who make the more strenuous choice to hike down and back from the rim of the gorge to follow the trail along the river are rewarded by dramatic vistas appearing around every corner. It's a moderately difficult hike that not everybody might be up for, but the point is that too few of the millions who visit Niagara Falls every year have an inkling that this experience, just a couple of miles from the Niagara Falls Visitor Center, is possible. Hochul points out that making the three separate parks into one will fold in such attractions as the Aquarium of Niagara and the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. It might be too tall in order to include Art Park and Fort Niagara state parks in this scheme, but it's so tempting to say why not. These are also breathtakingly beautiful state parks. These are also even without their adjacency to two of Niagara County's top cultural attractions. Basically, joining the three parks closest to the falls is a public relations task. There are infrastructure changes that need to be made, but the biggest changes need to be made in the minds of those who guide Niagara Falls tourism efforts. That means small guided tour operators, hotel and motel owners, and taxi companies, not just the official organizations such as Destination Niagara USA. The attractions themselves must also take part, urging their visitors to take advantage of the scenic beauty and opportunities for healthy outdoor activities these parks offer. One of the worst obstacles to the tourist potential of Niagara Falls can be found in the rhetoric of those who live there and throughout Western New York. There are way too many Debbie Downers living in this region, especially when it comes to Niagara Falls. New York State has already invested millions in improving these parks and their facilities, and there are more projects on the way. It's time to fully leverage that investment and its economic potential.
Thank you. Now from Joe Croix, has always valued the lessons of a famous essay, in my view. And he writes, Hubbard's message still resonates. There is an old essay written more than a century ago that still comes to mind whenever I see a task stall, a decision delayed, or a responsibility quietly passed along. A Message to Garcia was written in 1899 by Albert Hubbard. The premise is simple. A man is given a mission to deliver a message to someone named Garcia. The man isn't given directions, a map, or detailed instructions. He isn't told how difficult the task will be. He simply is asked to do it, and he does. That's the entire story, and that's the point. I first encountered Hubbard's essay in the 1990s while on a business trip. A friend handed me a copy, and I read it on the flight home. It stayed with me because it captures something increasingly rare: initiative, the willingness to take responsibility for an outcome without waiting to be guided every step of the way. The essay has become enormously popular in its time. Millions of copies were distributed. It was distributed to U.S. soldiers during both World Wars as a reminder that execution matters as much as intent. Long before buzzwords such as ownership and accountability entered the workplace, Hubbard put the idea plainly. Some people wait to be told exactly what to do while others figure it out and act. Over the years, I've seen that divide play out in business, organizations, and everyday life. It has little to do with intelligence or credentials. It has everything to do with mindset. Initiative doesn't mean charging ahead blindly. It means starting. It means taking the first step in addressing problems as they arise instead of waiting for conditions to be ideal. I was reminded of this again while watching the film My Week with Marilyn. In a brief scene, a young assistant is asked to find the phone number of a famously elusive playwright. No instructions, just a task. He doesn't hesitate or overanalyze. He figures it out. Looking back, I realized this mindset was shaped early in my life. I grew up around people who didn't talk much about discipline, but lived it. Work got done because it needed to get done. Only later did I understand how formative that was. Initiative creates trust. When people know you'll follow through without constant supervision, doors open. Not because you demand them to, but because others feel confident placing responsibility in your hands. Today, we often confuse preparation with progress. We schedule more meetings, ask for more explanation, and delay action till everything feels resolved. Sometimes that's necessary. Often it's just a comfortable form of hesitation. Hubbard posed a blunt question that still applies. To which class do you belong? Are you someone who waits for perfect instructions, or someone who accepts responsibility and moves forward? More than a century after it was written, A Message to Garcia endures because human nature hasn't changed all that much. We still wrestle with the same choice: wait or act. And in my experience, the people who act, even imperfectly, are the ones who quietly shape outcomes, earn trust, and move things forward. Sometimes the most valuable skill isn't knowing all the answers. It's realizing that the message won't deliver itself. And we do have a political cartoon here. From Mike Lukovich of the Creators Syndicate, we have a what is to be a baby, a large build with a very orange face and very orange arms, sitting in a high chair with a box of apple juice, and in front of him is a wide-eyed chef with a spatula in his hand, staring at him, and apparently he's talking to our leader, Trump, and he is saying to the chef, "Give me a waffle or I invade Belgium."
Our first opinion piece is by Joe Battenfeld, who's from the Boston Herald. Rubio emerges as Trump's trusted point man. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, once derided by Donald Trump as Little Marco, has emerged as the trusted point man riding shotgun on Trump's mechanical bull of a foreign policy, from taking Greenland to dealing with a dangerous Iran. No Secretary of State in recent history has had to deal with so many crises and hotspots all at once: Ukraine, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, Gaza. Rubio will either sink or swim in his precarious position. It's a difficult job. All it took was one major stumble, Benghazi, to trip up former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But if Rubio is successful navigating the multiple storms he faces, he could become the Republicans' best hope at keeping the White House in 2028. While Rubio has publicly backed J.D. Vance's presidential aspirations, he might change his mind and jump in the race if he's convinced he could win. If J.D. Vance runs for president, he's going to be our nominee, and I'll be one of the first people to support him, Rubio told Vanity Fair. That statement was viewed with suspicion by many Republicans who see Rubio not willing to play second fiddle to Vance. In 2016, when he ran against Trump, Rubio called him a con artist, but Rubio has since done a 180-degree turn. Rubio, a former Florida senator and of Cuban descent, has been praised as a calm, stable, reasonable, and trusted voice in President Trump's inner circle. He has had to negotiate so many different roles that it's sparking memes on the internet depicting him in charge of various positions in the Trump world. After one user on social media joked that Rubio will be president of Cuba, Trump replied, "Sounds good to me." Rubio himself joked recently that he is also a candidate for the current vacant head coach and general manager positions with the Miami Dolphins. Marco's official positions, in addition to Secretary of State, are National Security Advisor and Archivist of the United States, but he's much more than that. Rubio is now Trump's main point man in Venezuela, taking the lead in explaining the administration's arrest of Nicolas Maduro and defending the operation that resulted in Maduro's capture. Asked about Trump's comments that the U.S. could be running Venezuela for years, Rubio defended the president. "I understand that in this cycle and society we now live in, everyone wants instant outcomes," Rubio said. "They want it to happen overnight. It's not going to work that way." But Venezuela is hardly the only hotspot Rubio is dealing with now. A new report last Monday said Rubio and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have discussed the possibility of military intervention in Iran. Israel is now on high alert, preparing for that possibility, according to a Reuters report, which came amid deadly anti-regime protests across Iran over the last few weeks. Meanwhile, in another part of the globe, Denmark is reportedly seeking a meeting with Rubio after Trump again called on the U.S. to take over Greenland. Rubio, attempting to calm nervous lawmakers, told them the U.S. intended to purchase the Arctic island, not take it by military force. This was an example of Rubio stabilizing Trump and keeping him from getting into too much trouble. Good luck with that in the future. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 28 minutes past the hour. And we will go to our second opinion piece by Clarence Page. Clarence Page is from the Tribune Content Agency. A cruel irony. Native Americans profiled as aliens by ICE. In a nation as diverse as ours, immigration enforcement inevitably tests whether equal protection means what it says. Some tribal leaders in the upper Midwest say that test is being failed in the wake of the killing of Renee Good on January 7th in Minneapolis. By the end of that week, claims of aggressive immigration enforcement actions, including door-to-door operations in some neighborhoods, poured in of agents not only tracking down those without legal status to reside in the U.S., but also questioning and detaining others, whether they were legal residents or citizens or not. Social media was filled with video clips not only of Good's killing, but also of federal agents doing sidewalk and parking lot interrogations of Black, Latino, and other non-white residents. Masked and kitted out for combat, the agents give the impression of being law unto themselves as they demand to see identification papers. On January 10th, the tribal governing board of the Lac Court Orioles Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, based in northern Wisconsin, stated that it was closely monitoring recent events that took place in Minneapolis and around the country involving Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents. That vigilance was not misplaced. On January 9th, Oglala Sioux Tribe President Frank Starr comes out, stated on Facebook that ICE had detained 4 homeless members of his tribe in Minneapolis, as CBS reported. The Department of Homeland Security disavowed any knowledge of detaining any such members, and Starr comes out did not give the full names of the detained men. DHS told the Wall Street Journal it could not verify that any tribe members were arrested. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reported that Jose Roberto Beto Ramirez, 20, a descendant of the Red Lake Nation of Ojibwa in Minnesota, was pulled out of a car in the Twin Cities suburb, roughed up, handcuffed, and detained at ICE headquarters in Minneapolis. Last year at this time, Navajo Nation officials were reporting that tribal citizens were being detained in Arizona and New Mexico. For me, this reporting is not abstract. As an African American, it has hit me like a blast from America's past, the bad old days of Jim Crow segregation. It also reminded me of the bad old days of being a reporter in South Africa in the mid-1970s, during the era of racist apartheid before Nelson Mandela was released and elected president. As a reporter who looked undeniably black, I prudently carried my U.S. passport in my pocket just in case I was stopped by the authorities for the crime of reporting while black. Worse, as a longtime police beat reporter, I am appalled by the behavior of some federal agents I have seen. The worst appear to be more interested in fulfilling quotas than fighting crime. And then there's the gaslighting by the Trump administration. Leave aside the question of whether ICE agent Jonathan Ross felt he was in danger when he pulled the trigger to kill Good. Administration officials immediately set about characterizing Good as a terrorist, portraying other activists monitoring ICE actions as paid, and claiming that the door-to-door raids are really about investigating fraud, human smuggling, and unlawful employment practices. Racial profiling has long been a feature of law enforcement in the United States, and it persists despite periodic attempts to root it out. I don't need to detail here the stress, anxiety, and other ill effects it is known to cause, including PTSD. These are well known. What needs to be said is that these psychological wounds, the fear, alienation, and mistrust they inspire in the victims, appear to be a central objective of Trump's DHS at the moment. Civil rights advocates argue that the Supreme Court stay in Nome versus Vasquez-Perdomo effectively allows immigration agents to resume practices that critics call racial profiling, intensifying concerns about unchecked enforcement. Such raids are a grave threat to half a century of progress toward racial peace and understanding in this country, and an insult to the people who were on this land first.
Thank you. From Jackie Combs, Trump celebrates America while imitating King George III. It's a measure of President Trump's lack of self-awareness, a superpower really for authoritarian demagogues like him, who otherwise would shrink from their worst impulses, that he apparently doesn't see the self-evident contradictions in his simultaneous support for protesters of Iran and damnation of those in his own country. For days, Trump has preened as the all-powerful protector of Iranian protesters against their nation's repressive regime, that supposedly America First president could strike their country at any moment if he hasn't already. Iranian patriots keep protesting, take over your institutions, he posted January 13th. Help is on its way. But what was on the way to Minneapolis, he's posted just an hour earlier, was reckoning and retribution. His citizens are demonstrating in growing numbers against the paramilitary that Trump has created among immigration and customs enforcement agents, one of whom killed a woman there, Renee Nicole Good. Trump counterproductively increased the ICE deployment in the city. Trump had justified Good slaying this way. The woman and her friend were highly disrespectful of law enforcement. This from a man who watched on television for 3 hours on January 6th of 2021 as demonstrators at the U.S. Capitol disrespected law enforcement with chemical sprays, poles, planks, fists, and bike racks. And he did nothing. Because they were pro-Trump protesters. And once back in office, he pardoned nearly 1,600 of them. On the 5th anniversary of that Trump-incited insurrection, the White House website rewrote history to obscure what Americans saw in real time. In Trump's version, the heroic Capitol Police were the culprits for aggressively firing tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber munitions into crowds of peaceful protesters. That actually describes what ICE agents have been doing, and not just in Minneapolis, but in Chicago, Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, Memphis, and New Orleans. The No Kings rallies last fall, Trump, ever the brander, led his sycophant choir in Congress in renaming these events as Hate America rallies, and the 7 million peaceful protesters nationwide who attended them as communists and Marxists. But here's what makes the shameless contradictions in Trump's stance on the right to protest even more nauseating in 2026. This is the year that the nation celebrates the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the United States' foundational act of anti-government protest. It's Americans' bad fortune that such a man as Trump, a wannabe king, is the presider-in-chief for the year-long commemorations of the rebellion that ultimately threw off a real king who'd met protesters with force and retribution. Trump is so eager to be this semi-quincennial impresario that he's already had the U.S. Mint produce a $1 coin with his likeness for the occasion. But he should take the time to actually read the document that had this celebration commemorates. If he were self-aware, he sees that he resembles the king his founders were opposing. Their list of indictments of King George III included the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. Think of Trump's dispatch of federal agents and the National Guard troops into blue states and cities, and threats to send the military over the objections of their governors and mayors, state legislators, and members of Congress. Then there's this passage. The king has sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people, and this he has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. More, he is protecting them from punishment for any murders for which they should commit the inhabitants of these states. Protecting officers from the consequences of alleged murders? All in an all but unprecedented break with the usual protocols after law enforcement action as controversial as Good's killing, Trump's administration refuses to cooperate with Minnesota's local and state authorities or officials in simply investigating the ICE officer who shot Good 3 times and is denying them access to evidence. Trump's Justice Department has ruled the usual civil rights probe. Instead, the administration continues to blame the victim, Good, and is investigating her and her partner in hopes of finding some ties to activist groups. Fortunately, there's blowback which truly does respect the spirit of 1776. On January 13th, at least 6 federal prosecutors resigned in protest, and others in Minnesota and Washington reportedly are expediting plans to quit. Lawyers nationwide condemned White House henchman Stephen Miller for his false, provocative claims that ICE agents have immunity for their acts. Polls show that by wide margins, Americans believe Good's shooting was unjustified. But what has to worry Trump most of all He's lost Joe Rogan, Uber podcaster, especially to white males, and past supporter. You don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around snatching people up, many of whom turn out to be actual U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them, Rogan said on air. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to? Well, yes, it is. As a consequence, protests are sure to continue and build. What better year for that to be so? And it's only the semi-quincentennial, but a midterm election year. As Trump likes to tell those he's targeted in Venezuela, Greenland, and Iran, they can come around the easy way or the hard way. Well, the American people are giving him the same choice. He keeps choosing the hard way.
And now we'll go to our business and finance page. Trump's tariffs made 25 economically turbulent. This is by Wyatt Grantham Phillips and Paul Weissman of the Associated Press. Since returning to the White House a year ago, President Trump has overturned decades of U.S. trade policy, building a wall of tariffs around what used to be a wide-open economy. His double-digit taxes on imports from almost every country have disrupted global commerce and strained the budgets of consumers and businesses worldwide. They have also raised tens of billions of dollars for the U.S. Treasury. Trump has argued that his steep new import taxes are necessary to bring back wealth that was stolen from the U.S. He says they will narrow America's decades-old trade deficit and bring manufacturing back to the country. But upending the global supply chain has proven costly for households facing rising prices. The taxes are paid by importers who typically attempt to pass along the higher costs to their customers. That includes businesses and ultimately U.S. households. And the erratic way the president rolled out his tariffs, announcing them, then suspending or altering them before conjuring up new ones, made 2025 one of the most turbulent economic years in recent memory. Here's a look at the impact of Trump's tariffs over the past year. Effective tariff rate. A key number of the overall impact of tariffs on U.S. consumers and businesses is the, quote, effective, unquote, tariff rate, which, unlike headline figures imposed by Trump for specific trade actions, provides an average based on the actual imports coming into the country. In 2025, per data from the Yale Budget Lab, the effective U.S. tariff rate peaked in April, but it's still far higher than the average seen at the start of that year. Before finalizing shifts in consumption, November's effective tariff rate was nearly 17%, 7 times greater than January's average and the highest seen since 1935. Tariff revenue versus trade deficit. Among selling points to justify his tariffs, Trump has repeatedly said they would reduce America's long-standing trade deficit and bring revenue into the Treasury. Trump's higher tariffs are raising money. They've raked in more than $236 billion through last November, much more than in past years. But they still account for just a fraction of the federal government's total revenue, and they haven't raised nearly enough to justify the president's claim that tariff revenue could replace federal income taxes or allow for windfall dividend checks for Americans. The U.S. trade deficit, meanwhile, has fallen significantly since the start of 2025. The trade gap peaked to a monthly record of $136.4 billion in March, as consumers and businesses hurried to import foreign products before Trump could impose his tariffs on them. The trade gap narrowed to $52.8 billion in September, the latest month for which data is available. But the year-to-date deficit is still running 17% ahead of January to September 2024. Imports shift. Trump's 2025 tariffs hit nearly every country in the world, including America's biggest trading partners. But his policies have had the biggest impact on U.S. trade with China, once the biggest source of American imports, and now number 3 behind Canada and Mexico. U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports now come to 47.5%, according to calculations by Chad Brown of the Peterson Institute for International Economics. The value of goods coming into the U.S. from China fell nearly 25% during the first 3 quarters of the year. Imports from Canada also dropped, but the value of products from Mexico, Vietnam, and Taiwan grew year to date.
Thank you. From Jamie Leroux from the Detroit Free Press, we have Ford touting affordable EVs despite shift in plans. As Ford Motor Company sets course this year to revise its U.S. business strategy, shifting its focus to gasoline and hybrid vehicles, its leaders say don't count out their electric vehicles just yet. Ford's executive chair, Bill Ford, and the automaker still has every intention to offer a variety of electrification vehicles here and abroad. If you look globally, EVs are doing incredibly well, and we're participating in that, and we have more EVs coming, and we have a very affordable EV coming here, which I think was a big problem with EVs. They simply were not affordable, he said. We're attacking that problem. Ford is spending $2 billion to retool its Louisville assembly plant in Kentucky to build new midsize electric pickups, expected to start at $30,000 when it launches in 2027. Ford made that announcement in August when it said it developed a new EV platform that would allow it to efficiently bring several lower-cost EVs to market. But what complicates the plan is the plummet in the consumer demand for EVs after the September 30th expiration of the federal tax credit, allowing for up to $7,500 off the purchase of an EV. Ford and other automakers have had to reset their future product plans as a result. In December, Ford said it would restructure its business, a move that will cost billions of dollars. Not only will Ford shift focus from what was to be a future featuring all electric vehicles to one in the near term, at least, that offers more hybrids and gasoline powertrains, but it will also enter a new business segment, making battery energy storage systems in addition to batteries for EVs. As part of this change, consumers will see the all-electric F-150 Lightning pickup segue into an extended range EV for the next generation. That means it will carry a gasoline generator as well as a battery pack. You look at the Lightning and people say, oh, the Lightning is going away. No, it's not, Bill Ford said. It's getting an EREV, which we think is amazing because it's got towing, it's got 700 miles of range plus, and great performance. There are a lot of different flavors of the electrification, and we're playing in all of them. But the reality is that Ford has yet to make a profit on the sale of its EVs. In 2024, its Model E division lost about $5.1 billion, up from its $4.7 billion losses in 2023, all due to high investment costs, pricing pressure, and competition. Now the automaker must take $19.5 billion in special charges relating to the restructuring. Ford will take the majority of the charges during the fourth quarter, the results of which are expected to be released in February. That will be followed by $5.5 billion in cash to be charged through 2027, with Ford paying most of that chunk this year. The charges will impact the automaker's net results, but not its adjusted earnings. When asked about the burden of having to pay that price to change direction, Bill Ford was realistic but sanguine about it. Nobody likes to take that kind of write-down, but I think it was really recognizing what the reality was in the marketplace and the aspirations that we had and the whole industry had for the EV takeoff. It just wasn't happening, Ford told reporters. So it really positioned us much better for the future, and you've seen the way our stock responded, so I think Wall Street believes that as well.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5556. 5555. Burke James, nicknamed Jim. Giordano John J., M.D. Glynn Mary Gallagher. Messi Joseph J., nicknamed Coach. Sinibaldi Robert N. Strollo Anthony Ralph. Thomas Mary Lou Nee Metzger. Also nationally, George Borchardt, a literary agent of cosmopolitan taste and style who found U.S. publishers for future Nobel laureates, Elie Wiesel, and Samuel Beckett, and represented dozens of other prize-winning authors from Ian McGowan to Tracy Kidder, died at age 97. He helped introduce English language readers to Eugene Ionesco, Marguerite Duras, and other leading French writers, and was an early enthusiast for two French language works that became international classics, Wiesel's Night and Beckett's Waiting for Godot. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
Thank you. And now for a little entertainment, we have the Royal Stars from Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Thursday, January 22nd of 2026. You crave stimulation because you're enthusiastic, multifaceted, quick-witted, and easily bored. This is a year of service, perhaps service to family. The stars show the kind of day that you'll have, 5 being dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And it kind of looks like people are going to have a pretty good day here. Aries is 4 stars. Conversations with friends and members of groups will be lively today, to put it mildly. Tonight, enjoy solitude. Taurus is 4 stars. You might use today's astrological influences to have an intellectual discussion with an authority figure. Tonight, talk to a friend. Gemini, 3 stars. You might be on your soapbox sharing your political or religious ideas today. You can't resist it. Tonight, you're in the limelight. Cancer, also 3 stars. Financial discussions or discussions about inheritances or how to divide shared property will be intense today. Tonight, learn and discover. Leo, 3 stars. Interactions with partners and close friends will be intense today because people, including you, are obsessed about something. Tonight, check financial matters. Virgo, 4 stars. You can accomplish a lot today because you're determined and motivated. Don't let your energy be scattered in heated discussions tonight. Listen and be cooperative. And Libra, 3 stars. Parents should be gentle with their kids today to avoid escalating tension by harping on something or coming on too strong. Tonight, work to get better organized. Scorpio, 4 stars. This is a good day to make improvements to bathroom plumbing, recycling, and garbage areas. Clean up things and make them better, but listen to input. Tonight, be friendly and socialize. Sagittarius, 4 stars. All your conversations with others today will be profound and intense because Mercury is lined up with Pluto in your house of communications. Tonight, relax in familiar surroundings. Capricorn, 4 stars. When it comes to financial matters or your possessions, you will seek answers, perhaps even secrets. You want to know what's happening, and tonight, share your opinions. Aquarius, 4 stars. You'll have no trouble sharing your ideas with anyone today because 4 planets in your sign and Mercury are lined up with Pluto, lending emphasis to your words. Tonight, respect your money-making ideas. And finally, Pisces, also 4 stars. This is the classic day for secrets to be revealed, and who better than you to find them? Tonight, ask the universe for a favor.
I have plenty of those.
3 or 4 stars.
Board of Peace causes divisions. Israeli military kills 11 in Gaza as invitees weigh joining panel. This is Julia Frankel and Sammy Magday from the Associated Press. Divisions emerged Wednesday over U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace as its ambitions grew beyond Gaza, with some Western European countries declining to join, others remaining non-committal, and a group of Muslim countries agreeing to sign on. The developments underscored European concerns over the expanded and diverse scope of the project, which some say may seek to rival the UN Security Council's role in mediating global conflicts. Trump looks to form the board officially this week in the sidelines of the World Economic Forum meeting in Switzerland. Norway and Sweden said they won't accept their invitations after France also said no, while a bloc of Muslim-majority nations, Egypt, Indonesia, Jordan, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, said their leaders would join. It was not immediately clear how many countries would accept. A White House official said about 30 countries were expected to join and about 50 were invited. Two other U.S. officials, who also spoke on condition of anonymity, said about 60 countries were invited, but only 18 so far confirmed their participation. Trump was sunny about the prospects ahead of an event Thursday tied to the board, saying of the countries that were invited that some need parliamentary approval, but for the most part, everyone wants to be on. Chaired by Trump, the board originally was conceived as a small group of world leaders overseeing the Gaza ceasefire plan. But the Trump administration's ambitions have since expanded into a more sprawling concept, with Trump hinting at the board's role as mediator for other global conflicts. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he agreed to join the board, a departure from an earlier stance when his office criticized the makeup of another committee tasked with overseeing Gaza. Meanwhile, Israeli forces killed at least 11 Palestinians in Gaza, including two 13-year-old boys, 3 journalists, and a woman, hospitals there said Wednesday. It was one of the deadliest days in Gaza since the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel took effect in October, and comes as the U.S. tries to implement the deal's challenging second phase. And today in history, in 1901, Britain's Queen Victoria died at age 81 after a reign of more than 63 years. She was succeeded by her eldest son, Edward VII. In 1944, during World War II, Allied forces began landing at Anzio, Italy. In 1947, America's first commercially licensed television station west of the Mississippi, KTLA-TV in Los Angeles, made its official debut. In 1953, the Arthur Miller drama The Crucible opened at the Martin Beck Theater in New York. In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court, in its Roe v. Wade decision, declared a nationwide constitutional right to abortion. The court would overturn Roe v. Wade in 2022 in a decision Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Also in 1973, former President Lyndon B. Johnson died at age 64. In 1998, Theodore Krazek pleaded guilty in Sacramento, California, for being the Unabomber, responsible for 3 deaths and 23 injuries and a mail bombing campaign. In return for the pleas in federal court, he received a sentence of life in prison without parole. And in 2006, Kobe Bryant scored 81 points, the second highest single-game point total in NBA history. In the Los Angeles Lakers' 122-104 victory over Toronto Raptors, Wilt Chamberlain set the record with 100 points in 1962 for the Philadelphia Warriors. You're listening to readings of articles from the Buffalo News for January 22nd, Thursday, on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Ruth Nowotniak.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ruth Nowotniak.
and J.J. Patek, and we move on to city and region. Ryan ordered to take aim at ICE efforts. This is from Justin Sandel, the new staff reporter. With President Trump's immigration enforcement crackdown in Minnesota dominating national headlines, Mayor Sean Ryan is set to submit an executive order next week that would bar city employees from participating in civil immigration enforcement. Ryan on Friday announced that he planned to issue the executive order soon, telling people gathered for the Partnership for Public Goods annual community agenda event that immigrants and refugees have helped Buffalo grow and become a more economically and culturally vibrant city. Highlighting Trump's effort to shut down the federal refugee resettlement program and his recent escalation of immigration enforcement, Ryan said he heard from multiple people on the campaign trail who fear they would be likely targeted because of their accents or the color of their skin, despite being citizens or having legal immigration status. What we don't want is any chilling effect, Ryan said. We don't want people not coming to City Hall or availing themselves of services because they're afraid that somehow their visit to City Hall is going to yield a phone call to immigration officials. Ryan said the executive order would apply to all city employees from building inspectors to police. A Ryan spokesperson confirmed to the news that the administration plans to release the executive order next week, but said the mayor would not make any further comments about it until then. Questions emailed to the Department of Homeland Security press office was not answered Wednesday. The Federal Department of Homeland Security, which includes the Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol divisions, has spent the first year of Trump's second term recruiting ICE agents to enforce immigration law and arrest people who are not in the country legally. Agents have been deployed to target cities and states with Democratic political leadership, including Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, and most recently, the Twin Cities metro area in Minnesota. Many people in those cities and others across the nation have protested, and groups have been confronting ICE agents and alerting neighbors when they are in the area. Earlier this month, Renee Good, the 37-year-old mother, was shot and killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross while driving her car near federal immigration officers as they approached her, drawing widespread condemnation from public figures in the Twin Cities and beyond. Department of Homeland Security and White House officials, including Secretary Kristi Noem, have repeatedly described the killing as justified, saying Ross feared for his life as Good drove her car toward him. ICE agents have also been approaching people on the street, including off-duty police officers, asking them of their immigration status and demanding to see paperwork proving their citizenship. In Western New York, ICE agents have taken people into custody despite having legal status to be in the United States, according to lawyers, advocates, and family members. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope said she would have to wait to see the order in full before coming to a final conclusion, but generally supports the comments Ryan made last week. I've been very supportive of protecting those who live here and making sure that we do things the right way, she said. University District Council member Rashid Wyatt praised Ryan's decision, saying that because of what is happening in Minneapolis and elsewhere, city leaders need to do what they can to put protections in place for people who may be unduly targeted. From what I'm understanding, the goal was to get these individuals who have committed serious crimes, Wyatt said. We're not getting those individuals. We're getting people who are just going about their day-to-day lives, and they're being caught up in a system that sometimes leaves their families questioning what's going on. Fillmore District Council member Mitchell Nowakowski, who endorsed Ryan in last year's election, said he also supports Ryan's decision as a way to protect people from having their civil rights and due process rights violated, as is happening in cities across the country. If someone has committed a crime, local authorities already know who they are and how to address it, Nowakowski said in a text message. We do not need federal agents kidnapping people off the street and labeling them criminals on a whim. Buffalo is at its best when people feel safe to live, work, and contribute, and right now that sense of safety is being undermined.
Servers sue Hyatt, alleging wage theft. And this is by Samantha Christman, who is a new staff reporter. The Hyatt Regency Buffalo is being accused of wage theft in a potential class action lawsuit that was filed in Erie County Supreme Court this week. At issue is the way the hotel divvied up service charges on its banquet bills and how it communicated those charges to customers over the past several years. The Hyatt charged an additional 23% on top of its banquet bills, but kept nearly half of that money for itself before paying out servers' tips, the lawsuit said. State law says any mention of such charges needs to be accompanied by a disclaimer if the entire sum doesn't go toward gratuity. The attorneys who filed the lawsuit believe it could reach class action status since dozens of workers were affected. The lawsuit was filed by 2 workers who have joined a contentious effort to unionize employees at the hotel. The suit is taking place outside of the Workers United Union, but the 2 workers in the case, Kalia Millender and Jamie Willett, are longtime Hyatt banquet servers who say their hours were drastically cut when they signed cards with the union. Here's what the lawsuit claims to have happened. Say you are booking a wedding reception or a corporate lunch at a hotel. All the promotional materials and the menu say a 23% service charge is automatically added to the end of the bill. When it comes time to leave the tip, how much do you give? Most often, state law says, consumers will assume the added percentage is the automated tip. They will either consider the gratuity taken care of or leave just a little bit more. That is why New York has rules about how service charges are communicated to customers and how they are allowed to be split. For many years, Hyatt Regency Buffalo ran afoul of those rules, according to the complaint. The hotel recently added a disclaimer with the fee breakdown explanation to its catering menus online. The 2 banquet servers filed the lawsuit to recover tips they said they and others were owed from roughly 4,000 banquet events held at the hotel over the past nearly 7 years. Named in the suit are Hyatt Hotels Corporation, Douglas Jamal, Douglas Development, and Ambridge Employee Service Corporation, the hotel's management company. None of the defendants could be reached for comment except for Ambridge Hospitality, the management company at the hotel, which declined to comment. A number of servers who worked the affected banquets is expected to exceed by at least double the 40 people required for a class action lawsuit. The workers' attorney is Michael Dolce of the Hayes and Dolce law firm, which also represents workers organizing the Hyatt Workers United. According to state law, anytime a service or administrative charge is split with servers, that split must be explained and broken down on every menu and bill listing, along with notification that the service charge is not a gratuity. Exhibits in the suit show catering menus and wedding brochures going back to 2019 that list the service charge but have no breakdown or disclaimer. New Hyatt menus and promotional materials posted after workers started asking questions about the service charge and how it is distributed among workers bear the proper language required by law. Workers in the suit said their tip breakdowns and the service charge were never explained by management or in their pay stubs, and that they thought they were receiving the full 23% that was being added to bills. The service charge breakdown was disclosed in language within customers' final contracts, but that is not enough to comply with state Labor Department rules. The workers who brought the suit said their hours were cut after they signed union cards with Hyatt Workers United. I think they might have seen me out there twice with the picket line, and ever since then, that's when my shifts started drying up, Willett said, who still technically works at the Hyatt since 2019, but said her hours have been cut from 40 per week to only occasional shifts. She has since gotten another full-time job in addition to a part-time job. I get 1 shift a month at Hyatt, if I'm lucky, and that's if they're completely desperate, she said. Initially, Willett believed she and her colleagues' tips were split evenly from among the full 23% service charge, but she and other workers started talking to each other when their pay wasn't adding up. She said she has asked the Hyatt's payroll representative to explain how the service charge and tips are divided, but said the company declined to do so. Millender is a 15-year-old server working at Hyatt since 2021. She saw the 23% service charge appear on each banquet event order and was under the impression the workers were pooling and sharing it equally. I put in a lot of work. Like, I'm a great worker, she said. This is not right.
Thank you. Game-changing Crisis Center to open doors in Buffalo. This is from John Harris. A long-awaited facility to serve children, adolescents, and adults experiencing a mental health or substance abuse use crisis will open at 9 a.m. Thursday in Buffalo. The opening of the Best Response Intensive Crisis Stabilization Center at 430 Niagara Street took more than 3 years to come to fruition. Local leaders hope it will be a game changer for those in Western New York facing a crisis but who previously had few options to seek the right level of help. The center, operated by Best Self Behavioral Health, will be open 24/7 and offer children and adults in crisis the ability to stay for up to 23 hours and 59 minutes and receive counseling, medication support, and connections to follow-up care. Area health officials hope the center will ensure people are getting services in the right setting. Its presence could redirect some patients away from costly and crowded hospital emergency departments and allow hospitals such as Erie County Medical Center to focus on patients who its facilities are better designed to help. For a long time, leaders across Western New York recognize a critical gap in care, Best Self CEO Elizabeth Woike said. When someone is in crisis, there are very few options outside of emergency rooms or inpatient settings and not enough places specifically designed to meet people in that moment of crisis. The Best Response Crisis Stabilization Center was created to fill that gap. Centers like this are being built across the state as part of an effort to overhaul the crisis response system. Robert Moon, Deputy Commissioner for the State Office of Mental Health, said there would eventually be 26 centers across the state, 13 intensive centers and 13 supportive crisis stabilization centers, and Best Response is the seventh to be opened so far. Best Response, with 10,000 square feet of space, will serve 5 counties in western New York and is expected to see about 4,000 patients a year. Woike said the state provided startup and ongoing funding for the Crisis Center, which provides some stability at a time when federal support for mental health and addiction services is flimsy at best. Woike said, Best Response will build commercial insurance companies and Medicaid so the Crisis Center could become a self-sustaining down the line. The Deputy Erie County Executive Lisa Chimera called the opening a game-changing. For someone who has had a family member who experienced a mental health crisis throughout their entire life, I always yearned for a place like this, or a place where they could come and be supported, Chimera said. The project fits into a larger effort of reimagining how behavioral health emergencies are handled in Western New York. Launched last year, the Crisis to Care Collaborative is a group of leaders trying to improve the crisis response system in Western New York. The opening of the Best Response is a meaningful step forward in achieving this vision, Jane McGavero, the executive director of the Patrick P. Lee Foundation and a major supporter of the Crisis to Care Collaborative that also invested in Best Response. Officials from ECMC, which is also involved with the collaborative, said they are glad Best Response will be an option for patients. For 2025, ECMC's Comprehensive Psychiatric Emergency Program, or CPEP, reported total arrivals, both outpatient and admitted patients, of 10,041, which included 7,881 adults, 1,641 adolescents, and 519 seniors. CPEP can provide inpatient care and help patients at risk of harming themselves or others, but by virtue of its 24/7 operation, it often ends up as a landing spot for anyone experiencing a mental health crisis, even if a hospital is not the most appropriate setting for the patient's needs. We are overwhelmed with behavioral health patients every single day, ECMC CEO Tom Katroch said, and we are very, very supportive of this intensive crisis center.
Vet admits altering records to prevent dog's return home. By Stephen Watson, a news staff reporter. A City of Tonawanda veterinarian faces up to 1 year in jail after admitting she tried altering the identity of a dog that was brought into her office to prevent the pet's return to its rightful owner. Kimberly Parkhill Brown, 46, pleaded guilty Tuesday in Tonawanda City Court to falsifying business records, a misdemeanor, and companion animal stealing, a misdemeanor, under the state's agriculture and markets law, according to the Erie County District Attorney's Office. She faces sentencing on March 17th and remains released on her own recognizance. Prosecutors say the case started when a Yorkshire Terrier named Benji went missing from a Niagara County residence on July 17, 2024. Later that day, a Tonawanda vet office called the victim to report that her dog had been found and brought to the office to have its microchip scanned. The victim then received a second call informing her that Benji was no longer at the office because the dog had been released to the people who brought it in. Prosecutors say Park Hill Brown, on separate dates, altered clinic records to change the reason for the dog's visit from dog found in the woods to itchy skin, the sex of the dog in the patient log from male to female spayed, and the name of the dog. She also later removed Benji's microchip, registered to the previous owner, and replaced it with another microchip. The dog was later returned to the victim. A spokesman for the DA's office declined to comment on Park Hill Brown's motive for her actions.
Thank you. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is now 16 minutes past the hour, and it's time for sports. The Sabres hit right notes in Music City. This is from Mike Harrington. It nearly evaporated in the chaos of a harried final 30 minutes, but the Buffalo Sabres' 5-3 win Tuesday over the Nashville Predators will be neatly filed away as the night Konsta Helenius' first signature moment at the NHL. The Sabres nabbed Helenius in their first-round pick at number 14 overall in the 2024 draft in Las Vegas, and shortly after the pick was made, phones and Buffalo reporters started buzzing from other team scouts and draftniks in the media. Absurd steal at 14 inches was the words one of them used that night. We're learning why Helenius is still only 19 years old and is already an AHL All-Star in Rochester this year. Getting a chance with Josh Norris out of the lineup, Helenius made his NHL debut Monday in Carolina and had his stamps all over Game 2 of his career Tuesday at Bridgestone Arena. In the first period, he assisted on a pair of Noah Ostlund goals and notched his first NHL tally as the Sabres led 3-0. After 20 minutes, they pushed the margin to 4-0 as on a Tage Thompson goal, but watched as Nashville got within 4-3 midway through the third until Peyton Krebs put it away on an empty net goal. Coach Lindy Ruff put together a kid line, and it was sensational. Ostlund, Buffalo's second first-round pick in 2022, was a veteran of the time at 21 years old. Zach Benson, 20, was taken in 2023, and then came Helenius. The line had 59% of the shot attempts and 67% of the shots and 89% of the expected goals when it was on the ice. We tried to play a quick game, hang on to the pucks, play with speed, or Ostlund said. I play with Ostlund, he's a smart guy. The same as Benny. Smart guy too, Helenius said. It's easy to play with them. We're young guys, so we have energy. Helenius had 4 shots on goal in the game, one off Jack Quinn's team high, and was strong on pucks along the wall in the offensive zone. Ostlund scored the game's first 2 goals to push his rookie season total to 9, and Helenius assisted on both to crack an NHL score sheet for the first time. Helenius' big moment came at 17 minutes 24 seconds when he unleashed a snapshot over the glove of Nashville goalie and fellow Finn Juuse Saros off a Peyton Krebs feed. It was wide open in the middle, so I just called for the puck. Good pass from Krebsy. Helenius said, I decided I wanted to get it high, and it went in. Helenius said his parents had already texted him from Finland about the goal, so they were watching in the middle of the night. He said his mother got his first AHL gold puck from Rochester and was probably getting this one too. I mean, it's a dream. You always dream about scoring a goal in the NHL, and now it happens, Helenius said. It's a really good feeling. The 19-year-old has 9 goals and 21 assists in Rochester this season. His wrist shot is lethal. He walked right down the pipe there, Ruff said of Helenius' goal. There's not many guys who can score that goal, but he proved it's one of his weapons for sure. It's a really good weapon. It's a hell of a wrist shot, and he uses it a lot too, Ostlund said. That's good for him. When you get a good roll, he can play anywhere. He's a good skater and really good two-way player. And Lyon is king in return. The Sabres got tremendous game from Alex Lyon, who made 31 saves to win his 8th straight decision in his return from 10 games out of the lineup due to a lower body injury. Lyon battled hard through the second period chaos and again in the third to keep Buffalo in front. A couple of net front scrambles, a couple of times they walked right in, and we got some glove saves, Ruff said. He was big for us when we needed him. I've been in this building a lot before. When those guys turn it on and get it going, it's always a sight to behold, Lions said of the veteran Predators, who got 2 goals from former Sabres center Ryan O'Reilly. They certainly turned on the afterburners tonight. I know what kind of guys they have over there. They're warriors, and they found a way to dig in. Lyon got a big assist late in the second from defenseman Zach Metza, who scooped a puck off the goal line after it popped in the air with the Preds down 4-2 and pushed to get the score within 1. That kind of desperation is what wins and loses games in this league. Those tiny margins, Lyon said. It hit my blocker and it was like slow motion over my shoulder. And in the standings, the win pushed the Sabres' record to 27-17-5. It ended their 2-game winless streak and gave them a record of 16-3-1 in the remarkable 20-game stretch that started December 9th. The Sabres lead the NHL in wins and points at 33 since that date and are second in points percentage at .842. Buffalo moved back into the number 1 wild card slot in the East after Boston lost 6-2 Tuesday at Dallas. Both teams play again on Thursday with the Sabres at Montreal and the Bruins hosting Vegas. The Canadiens lead Buffalo by 4 points in the race for third place in the Atlantic Division, but Buffalo has a game in hand. And around the boards, defenseman Michael Kesselring, with a recurring left ankle, skated in the morning, but the Sabres held him out for the second straight game. Winger Beck Mallinston was felled by a shot to the right foot within 3.5 minutes left and hobbled down the tunnel. But he returned to the bench at the Horn to greet teammates after the win, and Ruff said that was a good sign. Winger Jason Zucker, who played 18 games for Nashville after the trade deadlines in 2024 before signing with Buffalo as a free agent, appeared in his 800th NHL game.
Joe Brady, Brian Daboll, Anthony Lynn among Bill's early coach candidates, and this is by Lance Lysowski, who's a news staff reporter. We're starting to learn who the Buffalo Bills are planning to interview as general manager, and president of football operations Brandon Beane moves to find Sean McDermott's replacement. The Buffalo News has confirmed that the Bills will interview St. Francis graduate Brian Daboll, their offensive coordinator through the first 4 seasons of Josh Allen's career, and Anthony Lynn, a longtime NFL assistant who was Buffalo's assistant head coach and running backs coach under Rex Ryan from 2015 to 16. Joe Brady, the Bills' current offensive coordinator, completed a first-round interview with the Bills on Wednesday, marking their first interview of the cycle. Brady, 36, was the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers for 2 seasons from 2021 before coming to Buffalo. He worked as the Bills' quarterbacks coach in 2022 before taking over offensive coordinator midway through the 23 season. Brady has interviewed with the Raiders and Ravens for their head coach openings and will reportedly interview with the Cardinals. According to the Ravens, Brady will have a second interview with the team. It's 100% an open search, Beane said Wednesday. We're still sorting through names. We're vetting names. The list is not final, and there's still 4 teams playing too that could have some candidates. Team owner Terry Pegula said the decision to move on from McDermott does come with risk, but that the job is being viewed around the league as highly desirable based on the interest the Bills have received so far. Daboll, 50, spent the past 3+ seasons as the New York Giants head coach, who he led to a 20-40 record. The Giants reached the playoffs during Daboll's first season in 2022, a performance that earned Daboll the Associated Press Coach of the Year award. He was fired after a 2-8 start in the 25 season. In Buffalo, Daboll helped develop Allen into a MVP finalist, and the Bills' offense transformed into one of the best units in the NFL. Lynn, 57, served as the team's interim head coach for the regular season finale in 2016 because Pegula fired Ryan. The Bills chose McDermott as Ryan's replacement, and Lynn became head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Across 4 seasons, Lynn led the Chargers to 1 appearance in the AFC divisional round and a combined record of 33-32. Most recently, the former NFL running back has coached the Washington Commanders running backs the past 2 seasons. Lynn was also the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator in 21, and he coached the San Francisco 49ers running backs in 22 and 23. The news also confirmed that the Bills will interview Colts defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo and Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. The 59-year-old Anarumo spent the 25 season in Indianapolis after serving as the Bengals defensive coordinator from 2019 to 24. He also worked as the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator during the 24 season. Weaver, 45, got his NFL coaching start in 2012 with the Jets as the assistant defensive line coach. He served as the Bills' defensive line coach in 2013. He worked as Miami's defensive coordinator the past 2 seasons and has previous experience as the Texans' defensive coordinator in 2020 and the Ravens' associate head coach during the 22-23 seasons. Finally, the news has confirmed that the Bills have requested an interview with Jaguars offensive coordinator Grant Udinski. The 30-year-old Udinski is scheduled to have a second interview with the Browns on Friday for their head coaching position. Bean was asked about the thought of pairing Allen with an offensive-minded head coach, with the idea that doing so could guarantee the two would stay together throughout the duration of Allen's career. Hiring a defensive-minded head coach opens the possibilities of the offensive coordinator having success with Allen, then leaving for a head coach job similar to what Daboll did. We'll definitely give these guys every chance, but we've got to be careful not to this is a bigger job than just a play caller and schemer, Bean said of hiring an offensive mind. I think we've seen where guys have been excellent play callers, but they've got to the head coach seat and they couldn't handle the adversity, the conflict management. It's a CEO job, it really is. A lot of your time as a head coach or a GM gets taken away from me scouting, watching players, or a coach with their scheming X and O's. So we've got to make sure we get the leadership, the CEO part. So not far down the road, we haven't started to know that, but I get the question. Bean said the group who will be involved in hiring the next head coach will include Pegula, Pete Guelli, the team's president of business operations, Brian Gain and Terrence Gray, the team's 2 assistant general managers, and Laura Pegula, the owner's oldest daughter. Quarterback Josh Allen will also be consulted in the search, Bean said.
Thank you. And where am I? From the Olympics, U.S. and Canada can put dominance on display. As an Associated Press story, 1 more goal. That's how close the U.S. was to beating Canada in the final at the 2010 Vancouver Olympics before losing in overtime. 1 more goal. That's how close the U.S. was from tying Canada in the semifinals in 2014 Sochi Olympics before losing 1-0. 1 more goal. That's how close the U.S. was to beating Canada in the final at the Four Nations face-off a year ago before losing in overtime. Canada won, right? U.S. Senator Jack Eichel said, so they're obviously on top. Canada has won every major international men's hockey tournament featuring NHL best players over the past 16 years, a run that includes the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, with Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Cale Makar joining forces for the first time on the same sheet of ice. The nation, known as the cradle of sport, goes on to the Milan Cortina Olympics next month as the gold medal favorite. It's always been Canada, longtime U.S. star Patrick Kane said. The U.S. has always been closing ground for decades, and the fight-filled Four Nations put the border rivalry in the spotlight while ramping up expectations that the game will be another showcase of North American dominance. The men haven't been able to get over the hump and defeat Canada and win a gold medal, and I think this is our best chance to do it, said U.S. retired winger T.J. Oshie, whose shootout heroics against host Russia in Sochi is one of the most memorable Olympic moments in history. This is the best USA team that I've seen, and if they can come together like they did in the Four Nations, I think for the first time I'd say it's a pretty fair fight going into it. European powerhouses Sweden and Finland, the latter being the defending Olympic champion, will be in the mix, as could be the Czechs or Germans. But in a tournament without the Russians, the U.S. and Canada could look like the teams to beat. BetMGM Sportsbook set Canada at a 5-4 favorite ahead of the U.S. at just over 2-1. Canada won the Four Nations on McDavid's goal in Boston last February and has the deepest, most talented forward group of any of the 12 countries involved. That includes 19-year-old Macklin Celebrini, who was on the couch cheering last February while in all of the quality of play on display. That was the best hockey I've ever watched, Celebrini said. Just the pace, the amount of skill, physicality, all of it combined is the best, and not only because the rinks are more than 3 feet shorter than NHL regulation length. That'll probably make the game a lot tighter, too, Makar said. The Olympics will be a completely different kind of thing, almost even more amplified. The U.S. has hopes for the first men's hockey gold medal at the Olympics since 1980's Miracle on Ice team. That's not a pipe dream, as the U.S. National Team Development Program and grassroots growth of the sport has closed the gap on Canada. The talent pool and the level of players in the Americans now, I think, is as high as it's ever been, Kane said. That's the kind of how we felt in 2010, 2014, and it keeps getting better. The team split at the Four Nations games that the U.S. Center Jack Hughes described as crazy and just a taste of what he and other players are in for in Milan. Once you see the level of competitions at the Four Nations, you're so hungry to get back to that. You want to be in the Olympics so bad just because the level of hockey was so high, said Hughes, who's set to play with the older brother Quinn at the games. Oshie grew up in Warwood, Minnesota, a 20-minute drive from the Canadian border. He described the simmering rivalry as hatred. For a long time, they were just almost too good to get past. So,
We have the break, JJ?
pardon me?
The break?
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and it is now 31 minutes past the hour. And let's move on to this business. I believe this is a business section.
No, we're going to Asking
we're
Eric.
going to Asking Eric.
Yeah,
Oh, my
who took the
goodness.
place of Dear Abby.
Yes, we are asking Eric. I like this guy.
I like this guy too.
Our Eric Thomas, and he says, Dear Eric, I've been with my husband for 25 years. 20 of those years I spent being a mother and a grandmother and a full-time employee, and I had a nervous breakdown after my second child passed away from an illness, and I wanted to move away, but not with my husband. He insisted on coming. But ultimately, I did not find another position and ended up retiring. We recently found out that my husband has been on the spectrum with Asperger's. While I've been busy living my life, it didn't affect me as much that he's unable to show affection or thought about anyone else. But now that we live together, it's bothering me. Plus, he was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. I just don't want to be together. I'd rather be alone, but feel so guilty wanting him to leave. I just don't know what to do. And it's signed Lonely, but not on my own. And he answers, Dear Lonely, it's possible to process all of this with your husband, even though you have different communication styles. Seek out a couples therapist who has experience working with neurodivergent people. It sounds like you're still working through a heavy load of grief. That's very understandable, but the grief can often cloud our decision-making or lead us to solutions that don't address the root issue. I'm not saying that you have to stay with your husband. It's not for me to say. But you may find yourself just as unhappy away from him as you are with him if you're not also tending to your own emotional health. A therapist can help you both put words to your emotions and make plans for the future and keep you both safe, healthy, and hopefully happier. And the next letter, Dear Eric, my husband and I have a blended family with 5 adult children between us. They all get along. One of these quote-unquote children's lives with anxiety, which all are sensitive to. However, on every visit she demands that all of the attention be focused on her and her drama at work and relationships, her health, her bodily functions, and so on. When others try to divert the attention, they're accused of not supporting her, and she just storms off or dissolves in tears. She's in therapy on and off the appropriate medications, but she's completely unaware of her impact on others. Her dad has gently spoken to her about being more self-aware, and she then attacks him and says he never takes her side and melts down. Then she punishes him by icing him for weeks and not responding to his contacting her. What can we do to keep our gatherings warm and happy? And is signed, Exhausted but Trying. And he answers, Dear Trying, Since the conversation between her and her dad didn't go over well, your husband might ask if this is a conversation they can have together with her therapist. Neither of them is feeling heard, but her response shuts down the possibility of moving past the miscommunication and finding a solution. Some parts of her personality may be just things the family needs to accept, but at the same time, she's an adult and can withstand hearing feedback. A successful gathering depends on everyone bringing themselves and their self-awareness into the room. Tell your stepdaughter that you're trying to make the gathering successful for everyone, and that you need her help to make that happen. If she can't or won't participate, then the gatherings may not be the place where she wants to be at the time. That's a good answer. And last letter. Dear Eric, I really like my husband. However, when we go to bed at night and are reading next to each other, he's just constantly moving, itching his beard, slowly rubbing his calf against the other knee so that his leg hair makes a strange noise. Just why? And other random things. He's not normally a fidgeter, only at this one moment of the day. He only responds to gentle requests by stopping for around 45 seconds. And if I ask more than once, he's annoyed. Any advice? And is signed, No Rest. Well, dear No Rest, it might be easiest to adjust your pre-bedtime rituals. It sounds like this fidgeting is his way of getting his body ready for bed. Who knows why any of us do the things we do? But his annoyance is likely coming from the fact that he doesn't mean anything by it and it helps him relax. That said, your annoyance is also valid. Everyone's entitled to weird body stuff, and everyone's entitled to annoyance sometimes. What happens if you read elsewhere before bed? Or he does. Try to experiment together on your pre-bed rituals rather than forcing solutions that might not work for everyone. Framing changes as experiments allows you both to report back on what you liked and didn't like and go from there.
He's always so calm.
He's got some pretty good answers
He
to
does.
some of the strangest stuff.
He does. And we'll do our first life feature, AI-powered therapy chatbots drawing additional oversight. This is by Shalina. Oh, I'm sorry.
Goodness.
Must be something in the air. This is by Shalina Chatlani, who's from stateline.org. States are passing laws to prevent artificially intelligent chatbots, such as ChatGPT, from being able to offer mental health advice to young users, following a trend of people harming themselves after seeking therapy from the AI programs. Chatbots might be able to offer resources, direct users to mental health practitioners, or suggest coping strategies. But many mental health experts say that's a fine line to walk. I have met some of the families who have really tragically lost their children following interactions that their kids had with chatbots that were designed in some cases to be extremely deceptive, if not manipulative, and encourage kids to end their lives, said Mitch Prinstein, senior science advisor at the American Psychological Association and an expert on technology and children's mental health. So in such egregious situations, it's clear that something's not working right, and we need at least some guardrails, he said. While chatbots have long been around, AI has become so sophisticated that users may feel like they're talking to a human. The chatbots don't have the capacity to offer true empathy or mental health advice like a licensed psychologist would, and they are by design agreeable, a potentially dangerous model for someone with suicidal ideations. States have enacted a variety of laws to regulate the types of interactions chatbots can have with users. Illinois and Nevada have completely banned the use of AI for behavioral health. New York and Utah passed laws requiring chatbots to explicitly tell users that they are not human. New York's law also directs chatbots to detect instances of potential self-harm and refer the user to crisis hotlines and other interventions. President Trump has criticized state-by-state regulation of AI, saying it stymies innovation. In December, he signed an executive order that aims to support the United States' global AI dominance by overriding state laws and establishing a national framework. Still, states are moving ahead. Before Trump's executive order, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis last month proposed a citizen bill of rights for artificial intelligence That, among many other things, would prohibit AI from being used for licensed therapy or mental health counseling and provide parental controls for minors who may be exposed to it. At a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing last September, some parents shared stories about their children's deaths after ongoing interactions with an AI chatbot. Sewell Setzer III was just 14 when he died by suicide in 2024 after becoming obsessed with a chatbot. Instead of preparing for high school milestones, Sewell spent his last months being manipulated and sexually groomed by chatbots designed by an AI company to seem human, to gain trust, and to keep children like him endlessly engaged by supplanting the actual human relationships in his life, his mother, Megan Garcia, said during the hearing. Another parent, Matthew Rain, testified about his son Adam, who died by suicide at 16 after talking for months with the ChatGPT, a program owned by the company OpenAI. We're convinced that Adam's death was avoidable, and because we believe thousands of other teens who are using OpenAI could be in similar danger right now. Prinstein of the American Psychological Association said that kids are especially vulnerable when it comes to AI chatbots. By agreeing with everything that kids say, it develops a false sense of intimacy and trust. That's really concerning because kids in particular are developing their brains. The Federal Trade Communication in September launched an inquiry into 7 companies making these AI-powered chatbots, questioning what efforts are in place to protect children. Companies such as OpenAI have responded by saying that they are working with mental health experts to make their products safer and to limit chances of self-harm among its users. With action at the federal level in limbo, efforts to regulate AI chatbots at the state level have had limited success. Dr. John Nick Schulmate, a psychiatrist at the Harvard University Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and his colleagues reviewed legislation to regulate mental health-related artificial intelligence systems across all states between January 22 and May 25. The review found 143 bills directly or indirectly related to AI and mental health regulation. As of last May, 11 states had enacted 20 laws that researchers found were meaningful, direct, and explicit in the ways they attempted to regulate mental health interactions. They concluded that legislative efforts tended to fall into 4 different buckets: professional oversight, harm prevention, patient autonomy, and data governance. You saw safety laws for chatbots and companion AIs, especially around self-harm and suicide response, Schumate said in an interview. New York enacted one such law last year that requires AI chatbots to remind users every 3 hours that it is not human. The law also requires the chatbot to detect the potential of self-harm. There's no denying that in this country we're in a mental health crisis, said New York Democratic State Senator Christian Gonzalez, the law's sponsor. But the solution shouldn't be to replace human support from licensed professionals with untrained AI chatbots that can leak sensitive information and can lead to broad outcomes. New York Democratic State Senator Andrew Goodnardes, who sponsored a law regulating AI transparency, said he's seen the growing influence of AI companies at the state level. And that is concerning to him, he says, as states try to take on AI companies for issues ranging from mental health to misinformation and beyond. They are hiring former staffers to become public affairs officers. They are hiring lobbyists who know legislators to kind of get in with them. They're hosting events, by the Capitol at political conferences to try to build goodwill, Goodnardes said. These are the wealthiest, richest, biggest companies in the world, he said, and so we have to really not let our guard down for a moment against that type of concentrated power, money, and influence.
And from May Anderson, real fakes. These are online shopping scams. Online shopping scams are not unusual. About 36% of Americans fail to receive refunds after purchasing an item online that they said never arrived or turned out to be counterfeit, according to a Pew Research Center survey conducted in April of 2025 and published in July. Faster and more sophisticated digital tools are only making it even harder for consumers to spot if what they are seeing is too good to be true. Some vendors and fraudsters have taken advantage of AI-generated images to create websites that have an aura of artisan authenticity or that point to a long history as a trusted small retailer, said Seth Ketron, a marketing professor at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's getting more and more common, Ketron said. If you're not careful or not really paying close attention, or you don't even know what to look for or what AI photos look like, it's easy to kind of just gloss over or miss that it's probably not real. Misleading e-commercial ads often pop up on the social media feeds or appear as banners on other kinds of websites. Experts say there are some simple steps shoppers can take to distinguish a legitimate small merchant from a suspicious one before clicking buy. Check for verifiable details. Deanna Newman owns C'est La Vie, an online jewelry retailer in Ontario, Canada, and learned about small business impersonation scams the hard way. A person claiming to have received low-quality goods from her site left an irate comment on Newman's Facebook page. Alarmed, she looked, but could not find a record of that order. Newman concluded a scammer was using the name of her store for several shopping sites selling jewelry. When people went online to complain about inferior products, they landed on her site. There were C'est La Vie websites claiming to have brick-and-mortar locations in New York, Birmingham, England, Dublin, Ireland, and other cities which didn't actually exist. Sometimes people were receiving products from China with very low-grade jewelry, and then some people weren't receiving things at all, Newman said. She dealt with the complaints, putting a warning on her Facebook page and online shop about the misleading C'est La Vie websites, and posted videos on Instagram and TikTok to demonstrate that she was a real person with a real business. Some of the copycat sites were taken down, but an influx of poor reviews and complaints nonetheless hurt her sales, she said. Newman advises shoppers to look for a verifiable address or other details that may indicate the site is authentic. When in doubt, reach out to the owner by an email, contact form, or phone. If they are genuine, they should be happy to reply, she said. It's hard because the consumer has to do a little bit of research on their side, but I would say too that if it looks too good to be true, it probably is, Newman said. Beware of a sob story. Including fake hardship stories along with its ads is one technique online scammers use to draw potential buyers. Common ploys include announcing a going out of business sale or a sale to honor a late son, daughter, or grandmother. Newman said the people who assume her company's name employed multiple versions of this gimmick, including having a close family member pass away. A customer who contacted Newman expressed sympathy for the loss of her son. I realized that they thought that I was the scam website, she said, so I was like, well, the good news is you haven't been scammed because I'm sending these products, and the bad news is you purchased from me thinking you were supporting someone who was going through something hard. Then check third-party reviews. Murat Katarcioglu, a computer science professor in Virginia Tech, recommends checking reviews before making any online purchases from smaller businesses. Customer reviews aren't always legitimate either, but they can be good to check as part of your research. Such as a Better Business Bureau and UK-based Trustpilot are two places to look, as well as marketplaces like Amazon and Etsy if the brand has a presence there. If the small business claims to be there 30 years, they should have reviews from them, at least going back at least a couple of years, Katarcioglu said. And then look up the domain. Another quick check is looking up where a website was registered. Katarcioglu recommends doing a domain search through the nonprofit Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers on lookup.icann.org or GoDaddy or Whois on other options. If a company claims to be in one country but is registered in another one, that is a red flag. If the site was registered in the past few months but is marketed as belonging to an established small business, that's another. And trust your gut. No matter how cautious you are, it's still possible to get scammed. If something seems off, it's better to hold off making a purchase than to make one you might regret, experts say. As AI gets better, then scammers or people doing dubious business practices are going to have an easier time duping people because things are going to look more and more convincing, Ketron said. So every time tricks like these come out or publicity is generated around them, people that engage in these kinds of practices figure out ways of doing it, and that becomes more challenging to detect.
Justices appear to side with Fed Governor Cook. This is by Mark Sherman from the Associated Press. The Supreme Court on Wednesday seemed inclined to keep Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook in her job, casting doubt on President Trump's bid to wrest control from the nation's central bank. The justices heard arguments over Trump's effort to fire Cook based on allegations she committed mortgage fraud, which she denies. No president has fired a sitting governor in the 112-year history of the Fed, which was structured to be independent of day-to-day politics. Allowing Cook's firing to go forward would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Federal Reserve, said Justice Brett Kavanaugh, one of 3 Trump appointees on the nation's highest court. The true motivation for trying to fire Cook, Trump's critics say, is the Republican president's desire to exert control over U.S. interest rate policy. If Trump succeeds in removing Cook, the first black woman Federal Reserve governor, he could replace her with his own appointee and gain a majority on the Fed's board. Trump has been dismissive of worries that cutting rates too quickly could trigger higher inflation. He wants dramatic reductions so the government can borrow more cheaply, and Americans can pay lower borrowing costs for new homes, cars, and other large purchases, as worries about high costs have soured some voters on his economic management. Fed Chair Jerome Powell and the board cut a key interest rate 3 times in a row in the last 4 months of 2025, but that's more slowly than Trump wants. The Fed also suggested it may leave rates unchanged in coming months over inflation worries. The issue before the court is whether Cook can stay on the job while her challenge to the firing plays out in court. Judges on lower courts have allowed her to remain as one of 7 central bank governors. The justices could deny the emergency appeal Trump is seeking and allow the case to continue playing out in lower courts. Chief Justice John Roberts, who also seemed skeptical of Trump's actions, suggested it may be pointless to return the case to lower courts rather than issue a more enduring ruling. With Cook's case under review at the High Court, Trump dramatically escalated his confrontation with the Fed. The Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation of Powell and who has served the central bank with subpoenas. Powell took the rare step of responding to Trump, calling the threat of criminal charges pretexts that mask the real reason, Trump's frustration over interest rates. The Justice Department has said the dispute is ostensibly about Powell's testimony to Congress in June over the cost of a massive renovation of federal buildings. In Trump's first year in office, the justices generally, but not always, went along with Trump's pleas for emergency action to counteract lower court rulings against him, including allowing the firings of the heads of other governmental agencies at the president's discretion, with no claim that they did anything wrong. But the court has sent signals that it is approaching the independence of the nation's central bank more cautiously, calling the Fed a uniquely structured quasi-private entity. In Cook's case, Trump is not asserting that he can fire Fed governors at will. Solicitor General D. John Sauer said, Cook is one of several people, along with Democratic New York Attorney General Letitia James and Senator Adam Schiff of California, who have been accused of mortgage fraud by Federal Housing Office Bill Pulte. They have denied the allegations against them. The case against Cook stems from allegations she claimed 2 properties in Michigan and Georgia as primary residences in June and July 2021 before she joined the Fed board. Such claims can lead to a lower mortgage rate and smaller down payment if one of them was declared as a rental property or second home. Those applications, Sauer said, are evidence of gross negligence at best and give Trump reason to fire her, In any event, he argued courts shouldn't be reviewing his decision, and Cook has no right to a hearing. Cook has denied any wrongdoing and has not been charged with a crime.
The administration drops an appeal of the EI ruling, and Trump administration dropped this appeal of federal court ruling that blocked the campaign against diversity, equity, and inclusion that threatened federal funding to U.S. schools and colleges. The Education Department, in a court filing Wednesday, moved to dismiss its appeal, and it left in place a federal judge's August decision finding that the anti-DEI effort violated the First Amendment and federal procedural rules. And now you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Thursday, January 22nd of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ruth Novotniak
and JJ Patek, and thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. Coming up next to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service is the New York Times Business section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have